Okay, so in this video we're going to be going over some of the things that you might want to look for when you're learning the Tae Geuk forms. I'm not going to be doing a breakdown of each one, here. It's just, common techniques that you'll find that we don't normally do, as well as just a couple of other miscellaneous things. So the first thing is, compared to our forms, like the Pilgay forms and Tae Geuk Il-chung, Tae Geuk I-chung, the Tae Geuk forms, they don't follow the traditional I pattern where you have like the first bar here, second bar, third, fourth, fifth. Doesn't follow that pattern, not exactly. So there are some extra turns in the Tae Geuk forms, like somewhere down the middle you'll do a couple extra turns. So that's probably going to throw you off, especially if you are less experienced with the forms. So like the overall structure of the forms are different and a little bit harder to learn. The rest of the notes I had are mainly just technique things. Probably the most important one is middle punches. So the number one common mistake that I see when people are learning the Tae Geuk forms is they're so used to doing the punches here, as they should be, that when they're supposed to be doing middle punches, they're in the habit of throwing them here. Okay. There is not a single low punch in any of the Tae Geuk forms. So if you think it's a low punch, it's probably not. It's probably a middle punch. Okay. Your middle punches are aimed at the solar plexus, so a few inches below your sternum. So if you have a V-neck uniform like I do, and there's like a logo here, that's about where you would be aiming. So those of you that don't know, it's like if you're doing a face chop or a face punch, that's where your backhand is, okay, a few inches below your sternum. So halfway between a low and a high punch, right there. Ton of middle punches in the Tae Geuks. There's a couple of high punches in one of the forms, but all the punches are middle punches other than that. The next important thing is walking stances. So basically you take a normal step forward, so I'm just standing here. Well, that's a walking stance. Okay, it's the only stance you do in Taekwondo that should feel comfortable. Okay, it's very natural. I tend to under-exaggerate mine just because of how long my strides are. So like this could be my square stance, and this could be a normal step, possibly. So I try to make mine short, but generally it's just a normal step forward for a walking stance. If you want to use like a guideline for a walking stance, you could consider it as like maybe a shoulder width by a shoulder width. That's not, you don't really have to follow that, but maybe. So if I were to put my feet together, maybe it's just, my feet are touching and then just slide over. That would be good, somewhere in there. There's another stance that we do in the Tae Geuks. We do it in Hapkido, but not in Taekwondo. It's called a back stance. So for back stance, so basically I'm standing like this. Basically you can treat a back stance like a 70-30 L stance. So for the L stance, so if I bring my feet together, the heels should touch. So instead of meeting in the middle like a T, it would meet roughly heel to heel. If it's a little farther to the left, to the outside, that's okay. And then 70-30, of course, meaning 70%, 30% of your weight. The back stances are more in like the later forms, so it starts at like 3, and then 4 through 8 will have a lot of back stances. The walking stances are more important for the earlier forms, so like 1 through 3, they kind of disappear after that. The last thing I wanted to cover is there are a couple of new techniques in the later forms, mainly 6 through 8, that I wanted to cover here, so I don't have to explain them when I break them down. First technique is, I think there's only like 2 of them, is you can just call it like a middle block or a closed fist block. They call it an outside block in the written instructions, but it's different than how we do our outside blocks. So that's basically like this. So it's done either in a back stance or a square stance when you'd learned in the form. But it's basically like an outside block, but your palm is pointing away from you. It's about the same level as an outside block. And then if I was to do it in a square stance, it would be in front of you, about in line with your shoulder, roughly. You should be able to look over your hand. You shouldn't be blocking your view. Okay, so it's basically like this. They also do it open hand, which we just call circle block. So like this a number of times in the advanced forms. So that's another thing you can try to remember. Another technique that they do that we don't do is an inward palm block. So there's two different variations on that. They do it middle palm block, which fingertips are at about your chin level or neck level. That one's done in Tae Geuk 6 and 7, mainly in 7. And then you have a lower palm block, which is at about solar plexus level, that you would do you'll find that in Tae Geuk 8. They're both the same, so it's kind of like, well, essentially, kind of like an inside block, like this, but you just turn your hand 90 degrees and open your palm. That's it. And then if you're to do it lower, it would be here. If you're doing it in 7 and 8, it'll be in a cat stance. So, but if you're doing it in 6, it'll be in square. Kind of like this. That pretty much covers all the important stuff. There are a few like one-off techniques that might be new, but those, I just wanted to go over some of the common ones. So yeah, now you should be, hopefully, you should be ready to learn whatever Tae Geuk form that you want to learn.